And of course, the flip side of public safety resources is accountability for those public safety dollars and for these officers. The county voted in a very split vote, 3-2, the supervisors, with the current 5th District Supervisor Duffy voting against, to establish a law enforcement committee, which I understand is currently soliciting applications to get off the ground. And that would, of course, review the policies, practices, procedures of the Sheriff's Department. Where do you come down on whether there is a need for police review in Humboldt County? And do you think the supervisors have pegged a good way to go on that?
You know, I think that transparency and the ability to solicit feedback from the public process is always important. It's sometimes cumbersome, but I think that there's nothing wrong with getting input from the community and feedback as to what can be done better.
And also, as far as rural policy, we have a very extensive road system for the county that the county's basically required to maintain if it's going to keep those roads.
Right.
And of course, for every dollar they spend on road repair, that's $1 less for our public transit system, which of course has come under criticism for having absolutely no Sunday service. In other words, simply not being reliable enough for workers to really depend on to get to and from work. Mm-hmm. Where do you come down on that divide between more roads, more road funding versus more services for folks who don't have cars or don't use cars?
That's why I think an infill strategy makes the most sense, because it will build the demand for public transportation. I think there have been people who have derided the Plan A as condos with bus stops, and as somebody said to me once, well, what's wrong with a few condos near bus stops? I think if we can concentrate the population, we can increase public transit. The roads are in terrible shape right now. We have over $60 million in deferred maintenance on our current roads, and that's why I think trying to do more rural development doesn't make sense, because we're going to have to dig our way out of the backlog, slowly. I mean, there's no way we can make up $60 million quickly, but we need to come up with a plan to do that. And if we can concentrate the growth coming in to the current population areas, then we can build some demand for public transportation, and that should actually improve the reliability and the usefulness of it. As you point out, it's got to be useful. It's got to be something that can be relied on for people to be able to commute.
Now, as far as social policy, the county has a huge social services department dedicated to helping folks, variety of reviews, depending on who you ask about how that's being carried out. And of course, the county does have some responsibility for running that multiple assistance center that was built in the last few years. Mm-hmm. How do you think poor and homeless folks are treated in this county, and what do you think of what the social services are really doing for them? Is it creating a culture of dependency, or is more support needed to try to get folks back up on their feet?
Boy, it's so complex. There are certainly areas where people are slipping through the safety nets, and I think that's critical. I think we could do some more innovative solutions. I think, for example, one of the things that I've been hearing about, that the research being done on the homeless problem in the plaza, and that a lot of those people they've identified now as people who have recently come out of foster care, and they're now adults by the mandate of the state, and yet they don't have really the resources or the safety net to be on their own. And I think trying to come up with a program to assist people that, rather than when they turn 18, they're kind of thrown out on the street, to be able to provide some resources to help a transition. It's very difficult, I think, for somebody who has been through foster care, who has not had a stable home life, to then all of a sudden just, expect to go out there and earn a job and find some place to live. And I think we need to be looking at different ways to combat that. I think also the area of mental illness is a big area that affects a lot of these people. Drug use is another area that is really very important and very under-addressed. One of the things that we did at KHUM a few years back was we did a special on methamphetamine, which actually won some national awards for us. And one of the things we realized was that if you wanted to try to get off of meth, that there was a couple-week waiting period in the county before you could get treatment. And if you're an addict and you're ready to face the consequences of trying to get off an addiction, you need to have resources immediately.
Now, of course, all the candidates for 5th District Supervisor live in McKinleyville, and the issues come up with some of the other candidates about whether McKinleyville can incorporate. Doesn't seem likely, but this issue of a community advisory council. Should McKinleyville do more to kind of set the course of its own destiny? And of course, given that recent state legislation enabling community service districts to set up their own police force, is that the sort of thing McKinleyville could possibly do?
Yeah, I don't know whether the police force makes sense, but certainly McKinleyville needs to be treated like a city by the county, and to have and to step up and to try to take control of its own destiny a little bit more. I think that one of the problems McKinleyville has had is because it's been a well-run community services district for the most part, that most of the growth in the county has wound up in McKinleyville. That's where a lot of the new housing has gone. And McKinleyville now, in terms of population, is going to be bigger than Arcata by the end of the census this year. And so therefore, yes, we do need to start looking at municipal advisory committees. We need to have a more comprehensive planning approach to McKinleyville, so it's not simply one highway right down the middle of Central Avenue. And I worry about Central Avenue continuing to become congested and reaching a point where we're going to have to actually put dividers on it at some point if we don't begin to try to create some mixed use within it.
Now, on the topic of political reform, obviously the current Supervisor Duffy is bowing out voluntarily after 2 terms, but that's not the case with some of the other folks on the board. Is a 2-term limit the sort of thing you see for Eureka Mayor, Eureka City Council, or state legislature, governor, president? Is that the sort of thing you'd like to see for the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors, to encourage a bit more of a citizen legislature feel to it and more turnover?
It cuts both ways. I think if you look at the California legislature, both in the Senate and the Assembly, that the term limits have sort of lost a sense of continuity, lost an ability to get things done. And I think that sometimes experience really can be a big benefit, because this is very complicated stuff. And I think that someone who's new to county government has a very steep learning curve. I think 2 terms would be too short. I would be willing to consider something a little bit longer, but I also think that the voters have the right to enforce term limits anytime they want by simply changing the person they vote for.